The Broadmoor in Colorado Springs, Colorado has operated continuously since 1918 under private ownership, generated positive returns through the Great Depression, World War II, the savings and loan crisis, the dot-com bust, the 2008 financial crisis, and the pandemic, and has done so without a bankruptcy filing, a distressed sale, a brand conversion, or a covenant breach, which, given everything this channel has documented about how luxury hotels fail, requires a specific explanation. The explanation is not that the Broadmoor is a better hotel than the properties that failed. The explanation is that the Broadmoor has a fundamentally different relationship with its customers than any privately financed luxury hotel in an urban market can achieve, and that relationship insulates the property from the specific revenue volatility that kills flagship hotels in ways that no amount of superior management or architectural quality can replicate. The Broadmoor's customer base is approximately 30% driven by the United States military and defense contracting community. Colorado Springs is home to Fort Carson, Peterson Space Force Base, Schriever Space Force Base, Cheyenne Mountain Complex, and the United States Air Force Academy. The Broadmoor is the premier large group meeting facility in the Colorado Springs area. When the military and defense establishment needs a venue for a conference, a training program, or a senior leadership retreat in the region, the option set is extremely short. That demand is not recession-sensitive in the way that corporate travel demand is. Defense budgets do not contract sharply during recessions. Military conference schedules do not get canceled because the Dow Jones has declined 30%. Subscribe now, because this episode is the case file that most precisely explains what makes the exception work, and why the exception cannot be manufactured by will alone. Spencer Penrose built the Broadmoor in 1918 on the site of a former casino at the base of Cheyenne Mountain, investing a fortune derived from Utah copper mining into a resort whose architectural ambition, a pink stucco Italian Renaissance complex whose main building was designed by Warren and Wetmore, the architects of Grand Central Terminal, was matched by a locational advantage that no subsequent developer could replicate. A position at the geographic interface between the Colorado resort market and the growing military installation complex that Colorado Springs was becoming in the 20th century. The Cheyenne Mountain location, at 6,035 feet elevation in a natural bowl formed by the mountains on three sides, had been recognized as defensively significant before Penrose built the hotel. The Cheyenne Mountain complex, which serves as the command and control facility for NORAD and United States Space Command, was built into the granite of the mountain that the Broadmoor sits beneath. The proximity was not coincidental, and its institutional consequences for the Broadmoor's customer demand have been permanent. The Penrose family's stewardship of the Broadmoor following Spencer Penrose's death in 1939 established the ownership continuity that has defined the property's financial history. L. Pomer Foundation, the charitable foundation that Penrose established with his wife Julie, owns the Broadmoor today and has owned it continuously since Penrose's death, providing the charitable trust ownership model that Case File 075 documented as the structural characteristic most predictive of trophy hotel long-term financial sustainability. Two things happen simultaneously at the Broadmoor that cannot happen simultaneously at a conventional privately financed luxury hotel. The ownership structure does not require financial return extraction on a private equity timeline, and the customer base includes a segment whose demand is structurally insulated from the macroeconomic volatility that destroys conventional luxury hotel cash flows. Either of those characteristics alone would represent a competitive advantage. Together, they create a financial model that has proven resilient across every market condition the American economy has produced in the past century. The Broadmoor's revenue structure across its century of operation reflects the specific financial advantage that a geographically captive institutional demand base provides in the context of a trophy resort property, a base load of occupancy and meeting space demand that is available regardless of economic cycle conditions, on top of which the leisure resort demand that the Broadmoor's mountain setting and amenity package attracts generates the premium RevPAR performance that the resort's luxury positioning commands. Most flagship hotels depend entirely on the second demand layer, leisure and corporate travel, without the base load. The Broadmoor's military and defense community customer base functions as a RevPAR floor that never disappears. The leisure and corporate travel demand that fills the hotel above that floor can decline during recessions without producing the covenant breach conditions that Case File 060's analytical framework documents as the universal trigger mechanism for hotel bankruptcies. A hotel that can cover its debt service from its baseload demand and generate its equity returns from the premium demand layer on top is a different financial instrument from a hotel that depends on the premium demand layer for its debt service. The Broadmoor is the former. Every hotel in this channel's archive that has failed is the latter. The specific numerical relationship that makes this distinction operational is the ratio of base load demand to total capacity. The Broadmoor's military and defense community customer base occupies enough room nights and meeting space to keep the property operating profitably during the trough periods that destroy conventional luxury hotels, not at peak performance, but profitably. The leisure demand that elevates performance during peak periods generates returns that the ownership's charitable foundation structure does not need to extract on a private equity timeline. This is the model that Case File 086's flagship hotel economics framework cannot produce through financial engineering. It requires two inputs that cannot be manufactured: a genuinely captive institutional customer base and an ownership structure that doesn't need to extract maximum short-term returns. The institutional resilience that the Broadmoor has demonstrated across its century of operation is not a tribute to management excellence in the conventional sense, though the Broadmoor's management has been consistently excellent by any available measure. It is a tribute to the specific combination of structural factors whose simultaneous presence at the Broadmoor is the product of a specific geography, a specific historical accident of military base concentration in Colorado Springs, and a specific philanthropic vision that Spencer Penrose had in 1939 when he established L. Pomar Foundation as the ownership vehicle for the property he had spent his fortune building. Those factors cannot be assembled by intention in a new location. A developer cannot decide to build a trophy resort with a captive institutional customer base and a charitable foundation ownership structure. The charitable foundation must be established in advance by an owner willing to permanently transfer wealth to a philanthropic purpose. The captive institutional customer base must develop organically over decades, driven by geographic factors and institutional relationships whose formation is not within any single developer's control. The Broadmoor's financial model holds because the model was assembled through decades of institutional history, not through a single financial engineering decision. The case files that document properties whose models do not hold document the reverse. Properties whose financial models were assembled through single transactions, whose leverage and return assumptions were made without the benefit of the organic institutional history that makes the Broadmoor's model resilient. The three positive case studies in this channel's archive, the Breakers, the Peninsula Hotels, and the Broadmoor, share the characteristic that their ownership structures and customer demand bases were established through decades of patient institutional development rather than through a single leveraged acquisition. The failures share the opposite characteristic. Every developer in Case File 086's flagship hotel economic model believed their project would be the exception. The Broadmoor is an exception. The difference is that the Broadmoor did not acquire its exceptional characteristics at the closing table. It accumulated them across a century of operation under an ownership structure that had no incentive to extract them prematurely. The next case file examines a property that acquired its exceptional characteristics through a completely different mechanism, one that was not planned at all. This content was developed using artificial intelligence tools as part of the research, writing, and production process. All AI-generated material was subject to human review, editorial intervention, and approval before publication.